button. Well, happy Wednesday. Good afternoon, everyone. Tanse, Michelle Nevedomi Nitsi Gasan, Miskochi Weskayagan Oche. So I just introduced myself and in the little Cree that I do know. So my name is Michelle. I'm joining from Edmonton, Treaty 6 territory. This is where I call home, but I'm a guest to the lands. I'm, a member of Kwakatu's First Nation. So I am Cree. My roots are in Saskatchewan. So I'm honored to be able to be here, be your host here with Innovate BC. We are here almost every Wednesday. This is a really good opportunity to learn, about other organizations that are doing fascinating things, economic development. And that's what we're going to learn about today. We got Taylor in the house today, and she's going to share what's going on in her world. But I always think it's important just to always take a moment, take a pause, take a deep breath. And we want to just acknowledge, the sacred moment that we're sharing together as this virtual community. We want to give thanks to Creator, the goodness and the gifts that are around us and in our lives, wherever we walk, especially when we go to the land and we, step onto Mother Earth. We see the animals, the plants. Hopefully you're near water, you get to hear that sacred medicine flow. So all of these gifts we're surrounded by, and it's all because of Creator's goodness. So we just give thanks. We come with a heart full of gratitude. And I tell you, even in our darkest and hardest days, when we tap into that gratitude, that really helps us to change our perspective and change our energy. So we say to Creator, hi. All right, so you've joined us here at Innovate BC. We got an amazing guest speaker, and I'm just pulling up her bio, which seems to be, sometimes modern technology is the best thing ever, and sometimes it doesn't quite work the way you wanted it to. So just give me a moment here. All right, so we got Taylor. She is going to highlight the Tu Deh-Kah Geothermal project, which is in Northeastern BC. Treaty 8 territory. So this project is 100% owned by the Fort Nelson First Nation and is expected, is expected to be the first commercial geothermal electricity generating facility in BC. So she's going to share about this project and what's going on in this community, really good things that are happening. She is. So our guest speaker, Taylor Behn-Tsakoza, I think we practiced her last name like 5 minutes ago. So she is the community liaison for the project and will present today from a community perspective and share key milestones and some exciting value-added opportunities being pursued by her nation. So we're excited that you're here, Taylor. We're excited to learn what you've been learning, what you know to be true, that what's happening in your community. So I'm going to pass this virtual mic over to you. There will be opportunity for questions for Taylor, comments at the end. Feel free though to use that chat box along the way. If there was something that, a question or even a comment, put it in that chat box and we'll definitely make note of it. And also let us know, use the chat box now and let us know where you're joining from. We always love to hear where our family's coming from. So we welcome you. We ask you come with an open mind, open heart. I always am so inspired when we get to hear stories like this. So Taylor, welcome. So honored you're here, and I'm going to pass this mic off to you.
Awesome. Wasi Cho, hi. Thank you, Michelle. It's good to see you. It's good to be here, and just thank you for that opening. Just your presence. Like I was pretty nervous, like just sitting here, and now I'm like, just a reminder of like, I don't know, the gift of today, the gift of like being able to sit here and share today is like, I just feel like very excited and again honored to be here. Hopefully, technology continues to work on our side, and we'll I'll throw out my presentation I have today for all of you. And again, thank you for those who have joined today. I do see some familiar faces, so thank you for whether you're here to support me or to learn more about geothermal. I'm just really, very honored to see some people online today. So as that loads, awesome. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Taylor Behn-Tsakoza. I'm the community liaison for Tu Deh-Kah Geothermal. And today, as Michelle mentioned, I kind of want to present from this community perspective. And I titled this presentation, More Than Just Energy. And I think for myself as a community member and band member of Fort Nelson First Nation, this project is really more than just producing energy. It's about, bringing food security and energy security, and I think wellness to my people in my community. So yeah, really excited to be here. And I think if you've seen my coworker Jamie Capablanc present, you'll notice he comes from a very technical background. He has a background in oil and gas and is a power engineer. So you will, if you do have seen him present, my presentation is going to be a little bit different. And I'll go into that in the next slide, but I just want to thank Can-Do for hosting today, for Innovate BC for putting on this really amazing series. Let's see if this will change. There we go. Awesome. So as I said, I'll be presenting from a community perspective, and the way I like to present, I guess the Tu Deh-Kah story is just that, as a story. And if you remember back to maybe grade school, a story is who, what, when, where, why, and sometimes how. And I will be talking about all those components and kind of how Tu Deh-Kah came to be. And I'll tell you a little bit about myself, the community, and then like, what is this project? Where are we now? Where are we going? And how will we get there? So buckle up. And a lot of my slides are pictures, so I will be talking through this entire thing. So again, if you have any questions, just let Michelle know. She'll be monitoring. Alrighty. So I do want to just maybe give a little bit of background to who I am and how how I came to be a part of this project, and what it means for me as a young person, as a young member of Fort Nelson First Nation. So as I mentioned, my name is Taylor Behn-Tsakoza. I'm Dene. I'm Dene on both sides of my family, actually. So my mom is from Fort Nelson First Nation, and where I'm also a member of, and then my dad is from the Proper River First Nations. My parents' territories overlap, so both of my communities are really close to each other. I was born and raised in my community, and I'm just really proud of where I come from, and on both sides of my family, and I'm just very. I tried to, I guess, showcase that in everything I do, and this project is definitely part of that story and that legacy that I have for myself and for my community. So I actually don't have, unlike my coworker Jamie, as you'll see him on the screen there, I have a degree in health and physical education. I have at this point like 6 or 7 years of experience working with Indigenous youth on and off reserve and recreation settings. And I'm actually celebrating my 1 year with the project next week. So when I think about it, I'm like, wow, it's kind of hard to believe that I'm here. And I'll get into kind of a funny story. And I hope you think it's funny, about like how, as I saw this job posting for community liaison come up, and I was like, oh, I don't know anything about geothermal. I don't know anything about clean energy, but I do know my community. And I think, and the more I learned about this project and knowing like how in the early stages that this project was in at the time, and how vital that community perspective was going to be on this project, I was like, you know what, like I think I can use my health background, my community knowledge and experience, and bring it to this project. And so a year later, I'm here, and I'm really honored to be. But I do have to, the funny story that I'll share, really just maybe speaks to some of the feelings that community members might have. And if you are on this call today, if you're watching, or if you're watching this and you know that community dynamics are really challenging, there's people are kind of both sides, and I was definitely on the side that didn't support this project. And I actually told my boss that in my job interview. So a year ago, I was in my job interview, and my now boss, it was, doing his asking me questions, and then he's like, okay, that's all I have. Is there anything you'd like to ask, anything you'd want to share or before we end this? And I was like, I just have to be transparent and tell you that I don't believe in this project. And he was like, so, and in the conversation we had then, and we continue to have, I just, and I'll get into it, kind of the history of my territory and of my nation, but I just, something about geothermal, I was like, what is it? The project was only about, the project is, it is about 2 kilometers away from my reserves, or 7 kilometers, 7 kilometers away from my reserve, but I didn't know anything about it. I think so, like, a lot of these feelings of like not believing in it, and just questioning, and it came from like how don't I know anything about it, and it's literally in our backyard. So and I'll finish that story at the end, but that's kind of like how I came into this position, a little bit questioning a lot of criticism, I would say, a lot of not believing in where this project could be, and then also that health background. So all those kind of have followed me in this journey of being a community liaison. But anyway, so that happened. But I will give Can-Do a shout out, and not just because I'm sitting in their nice office in Edmonton, which I'm also calling in from today, Michelle. But I did take part in their Youth Economic Development Summit in 2020 and in 2021. And then I was part of the Youth Planning Committee for this year's summit. And so that was like the first time I've ever heard like the words economic development, economic reconciliation came up a lot, own source revenue, all these terms that I was like, I didn't know until I attended those summits. And so when it came to this project, I was like, oh, this kind of like, I was learning parts of this, like throughout those experiences at those summits. And although this is my full-time job, I do a lot of like youth advocacy, like advocating for Indigenous peoples as a whole, but also I talk a lot about reconciliation, climate change, and at like national and international forums. And so when this project came up, I was like, you know what, like if I'm actually gonna like put action into like what I'm preaching at like all these things around the world, like how can I bring that home in this project? I believed at the time, and I can say now that it does allow me to like tangibly act on those things that I've been doing everywhere, and at times it didn't feel like I was doing it for my community. So yeah, that's me. And again, I just want to highlight Jamie Capablanc. I did mention him at the beginning, but it was actually him and I that were the first employees of Tu Deh-Kah, and we're both band members of Fort Nelson First Nation. We're both young people. And in the conversations we had early, like this time last year, he started a month before me, so we're both, still fairly new, and we were like talking about, we're like, wow, like we both went off and went to university. We both, want to see our community thrive, and we both want to see our community, still be here in our land and our water and our air, like all these things we want to see for the next 7 generations, as our like parents and grandparents did for us. And so this was us last winter, and this, I have to say, it was minus 30 out in this picture, so it's like 23 out today in Edmonton, which I'll enjoy the nice weather before this comes. But it was just like him and I have been like building Tu Deh-Kah, what feels like from the ground up, because as young people, we know the we know that climate change is real. We know that, if we want to be a self-sustaining nation, then we need to find ways to do that. And so I'm just really proud of both of us. And anyway, that's a little bit about me, a little bit about Jamie, and kind of like how we both have come to be here. But now I'll get into a little bit about who my community is. I think when people hear like Tu Deh-Kah, I think the project itself is really important, but with my nation being 100% owners of it, I think that community story also has to be there. And I think that's what's unique about this project, is because we're 100% owners, we have control over that. And we have, the ability to educate people about who we are as a nation, who we are as a people. And so I want to do that today for all of you that are joining. So as I mentioned, my community is Fort Nelson First Nation. We're a Dene and Cree community, and we're located in the northeastern corner of British Columbia. I have a map on the next slide, but we're about an hour and a half south of Northwest Territory border, and an hour and a half east or west of the Alberta border. So if you could put a pinpoint in the northeast corner, that's where we are. Our nation is a signatory to Treaty Number 8, so we are a treaty nation, and we're fairly small. We have about 900 members, with about 300 of us living on reserve, and we're fairly isolated, and which comes with a lot of challenges. But I think the beauty of that is like we're really connected to our territory. A lot of our community events are land-based, and we're a very proud community. I'm sure if you talk to any other FNFN member, you will. It's evident that our community has really instilled that pride into its members, and and I just love where I come from and who my community is. And so all right, so that's kind of who we are. And I talked about like we're in the northeast corner. You can see from this picture, and this is like, if you can see my mouse, this is like the newer part of our reserve where it's more developed. We have a school here, a wellness building here, a lot of residential buildings, a lot of houses. And you can see that we're surrounded by boreal forest. And, for decades, my territory has been stripped and had many resources stolen. Land, the trees, logging was a big industry back up until probably the early 2010s, maybe even before that. Oil and gas, there's, some people are like, call us the Fort McMurray of BC. A lot of oil and gas activity, a lot of fracking. And with fracking, you need a lot of water for that. So my territory for decades has been the target of resource extraction. And my nation, and like even south of us, my dad's nation, we haven't, like everything that was extracted, both physically and like the monetary value of that, like left with all the companies, with all the fly-in workers. None of that stayed in our territory. And, a lot of these discussions around reconciliation are happening. And I think that's what this Tu Deh-Kah is really bringing, that economic reconciliation discussion. And I think action back to this territory that was never there in the first place. And so, and I think like back to my story about like, I didn't believe in this project, and why I still took this position was because I wanted to ensure that my concerns and other members' concerns around like making sure that like our treaty rights aren't infringed on anymore, that our water and air and land are like being considered in all discussions. So that's where, I kind of use that perspective, and like my want to see those be like at the forefront was like how I came to be here. But I just wanted to add that because I know, and if you've been in my territory, it's most likely for work, or you could be driving to Alaska, because I should mention that we're mile 300 on the Alaska Highway. So lots of history, a lot of it not very good history, but how can we make that better is I think something that we all should be reflecting on. What else? So I think just with this, I just wanted to kind of highlight where I mentioned where we are. We're right in the northeast corner. Alberta borders here, Northwest Territories borders here, and you can see that we're very isolated up here in the northeast. The closest town, which would be Fort St. John, is about 4 hours south, and so physically we're isolated. And I'll talk a bit about like the energy part, but just know that this project, that isolation is a big part of why this project is important. Well, I'll get into a little bit now. I can talk a little bit more about the project. So if you're here to learn more about it, this might excite you a little bit more, but I did want to just really acknowledge that community piece is so vital to this entire conversation. Alrighty, Tu Deh-Kah Geothermal. So Tu Deh-Kah is actually a Dene word. It's a South Slavey word. And I guess depending what elder you talk to, it has a few different like, what is it called? Like it means something different depending on what elder you talk to. So Tu Deh-Kah roughly can translate to hot water, water in the form of steam, boiling water, something along those lines. And as I'll share a video shortly talking about what geothermal is. You know, my nation saw the importance of incorporating our culture into this project as well. And I think as I talked about that really harmful history of resource extraction in our territory, we wanted to ensure that like our culture and our language was also part of this. And like, how was this project advancing that? And naming the project was just one component of many that we're trying to, you know, incorporate that knowledge into. So our logo and the naming was actually done by a fellow community member, Chris Adicki. She named it and she did the beautiful logo that we now have. So really just must show to her for creating that, because I think it just brings so much life. I think when my perspective and my knowledge of naming things comes with a lot of responsibility. So I think when like us giving this a Dene name, like I think we as like two-leggeds, as humans, have a responsibility then to like nurture and like give life to like this like spirit that we have given this project. And so I think that's also a really important component of this. For some who maybe know this project like by Clarke Lake, that's kind of another name if you weren't sure where Tu Deh-Kah came from. It was just replacing that, I think, colonial name. Yeah, and already. Okay, so that's Tu Deh-Kah. I did want to share a video that will probably explain a little bit better than I could what geothermal energy is, because it is a new technology that is being used, that is going to be used in Canada. And it's actually really cool. So I'll share this video and then talk about it.
Renewable Energy 101. If you've ever observed an erupting volcano or the geysers at Yellowstone National Park, you've seen geothermal energy in action. The Earth's crust is made of rocks and water. Deep below that is a layer of hot, molten rock called magma, which is even hotter than the sun's surface. The heat just over 6 miles below the surface contains 50,000 times more energy than all the oil and natural gas resources in the world. Releasing a small amount of that heat in the right way can create electricity. A well drilled a couple of miles deep can capture the rising hot water and steam. That steam spins a turbine and a generator produces electricity. Geothermal is one of the least explored sources of renewable energy in the US, and most of us probably don't spend much time thinking about it. But since it's a pollution-free, renewable source of energy that's consistently reliable, at least it has been for the past 4.5 billion years, maybe we should.
Yay, geothermal energy. That video is US based, obviously, but I did like the simplicity of it. I think for myself, you know, coming from someone who didn't know anything about geothermal, and times like I still am learning about it. I think it just, yeah, I don't know, it describes it kind of in a fun way as well, what geothermal energy is. And in that video, it might not have been clear, but in order to say you have a geothermal resource, you need 3 things. You need heat, you need water or fluid, and you need pathways, so cracks in the rock, to get to those things. And so, as I mentioned in the video, geothermal energy is pulling hot liquid or fluid up from deep within the earth. And then you can see it was talking about that it gets mixed with, I know we're using isobutane, and I'm sorry if anyone's looking for really technical information. I'll use a lot of layman terms, but basically this like hot fluid and this like heat that's coming up from what we call a production well is getting mixed with this isobutane, which then produces steam. That steam, like the video said, is going to turn this turbine, and that's what's going to provide electricity to this generator, and then that gets sold to the grid, to what we then can turn our lights on and use all of our electronics with. After that steam goes through this, it then turns, it gets cooled down a bit to then turn back into a liquid state. So then that liquid will then come down, and then we pump it back into the earth, into something called an injection well. And but before like this fluid is pumped back into the ground, it's still hot. So I'll talk about some other opportunities that my nation is looking into beyond just energy like production. So just keep that in mind. As I refer to some of this, I might like kind of talk about this process. And yeah, I think that's like the gist of what a binary cycle looks like. And I think in that video, it also talked about how consistent geothermal energy is. And I showed you that picture of how far north we are on that map. And when in that picture of me and Jamie standing in -30 plus, like it was probably -32 or 33 that day. Geothermal energy runs 24/7, 365. And so again, as I talk about this, just knowing that this cycle just goes around and around. The fluid gets pumped up, goes through this heat exchanger, and then gets pumped back down. So that cycle just repeats itself, and it's underground. So unlike other renewable energy sources like solar or wind, this is consistent. Whereas those other sources, you need sun, you need wind, like it's very variable. Where this is a little bit more reliant. And yeah, are reliable, sorry, not reliant. Yeah, so yeah, that's geothermal energy. I can tell you a bit about this graph is relating directly to the well test site that we have up in Fort Nelson. So in this last graph, this production well and injection well right here. So this is actually some data from our well that we have drilled right now. So we're actually drilling about 2.4 kilometers down into the earth. So that's how deep our wells are right now. This would be the production well. So this is a pump, and then this is the injection well. Again, these might be a little bit technical, but I think it's important because these are a lot of questions we get asked. And yeah, so the fluid gets pumped up into this pump, and then it gets injected there. But just, I guess the important thing is just knowing how deep that we're drilling, because in the video it said 6 miles, which some places around the world are capable of doing. And we actually, our geothermal resource isn't as deep, so we don't have to do that. But yeah, so already continuing on with the story, the who, we got the who, the where, what is it? So now I'll talk a little bit about why we're doing it and why we think we can do it. And I do want to kind of bring back again that this history of resource extraction in my territory, and maybe and the isolation of Fort Nelson as a whole. So the picture on the left is a natural gas power generating facility that's just south of Fort Nelson. So it's about like 15 kilometers south. I think this is either the reserve or the town of Fort Nelson. So it's fairly close, but this is our only source of energy produced in Fort Nelson. And this is a fossil fuel. It emits a lot of carbon, CO2, and it just, yeah, it isn't as clean as, other forms of energy, which is why, we kind of were looking into geothermal energy, was again, these conversations around net zero, climate change, all these things. I should also note, why we're doing this, thinking about the remoteness. This is a zoomed in version of the BC Hydro transmission line map. And so up here in Fort Nelson, we're actually not connected to the rest of the BC grid. So this is our only source of power. You'll see kind of into the Alberta side, like if something were to happen to this, we could then buy power from like Rainbow Lake, which is then connected to the Alberta grid. But if we could generate that electricity at home, why not? And so that's why we're kind of doing this. So yeah, we're isolated in terms of physical location, but also energy production. So that's a little bit about that. Continuing on with this story of why we think we can do this, or why we're doing it, is because a lot of data tells us we can. And so this is a gradient map, a heat gradient map of different geothermal pinpoints that was done. I should know this by now. I believe this was a few years ago. But this map gathered data from over 26,000 wells. So you can see in southwestern Saskatchewan, southeastern Alberta, up into the north, and then the northeast. Just shows different hotspots. There is a project in southern Saskatchewan called the Deep Project that's similar to ours. That's kind of the only other place that geothermal is being developed. And so when my nation was looking at this, was like, is there potential for geothermal in that territory? And the answer was yes. So this little box is my community and is where our test site is. And you can see that it's really hot there. And so we used this data to then kind of, amongst many forms of data, to then, decide whether we were going to pursue this, and we did. What else? Yeah, I will talk about getting into more maybe building upon that and why we think we can do this. So we were required to do 30 days of pump testing in order to, continue on with the project and to get some capital funding, to get a loan, to begin the negotiations with BC Hydro for a power purchase agreement, the PPA. And so we did try to do the pump, it was supposed to be our only 30-day pump test last December. And unfortunately, we only pumped for about 50 hours, which we needed 30 days of continuous pump tests, testing of our wells. And so this was just some data from it, but in really layman terms, you can see that we were getting a lot of water and gas, what is it called? Basically, there was just too much gas mixed in with the fluid that we were trying to pump up. And then in this slave point here, there was a coning effect that was happening and the pump was kept failing. And so we stopped testing, went back to the drawing stage, and we're trying to overcome some of these challenges we were having so we could complete that 30 days. And so this is just kind of summarizing. Although we only tested for 50 hours, we did see high volumes of water. We've seen pathways in the rock, and we've seen heat, which if you remember to kind of that geothermal 101 slide, those are the three things that we need to kind of say we have a geothermal resource. And even though we only tested for 50 hours, we did see that, which was a really good sign. And then again, I guess the challenge is here, high gas water ratio, which our electric submersible pump, which is an ESP, which is this thing right here, we fixed everything that was wrong. And that brings us to this summer and kind of what we were hoping to mitigate. I can tell you that we installed a liner. I mentioned that there was this coning effect here in the slave point. We installed a liner to then kind of mitigate that problem, and it worked. And so this summer, we were able to complete 30 consecutive days of pump testing, which was required. And as you can see, we're the second geothermal project in Canadian history to complete this testing successfully. I did mention that geothermal is kind of a newer industry in Canada. And so other people have tried to do it, but they haven't been successful for a number of reasons. And so this is a huge accomplishment for this project. And to be 100% Indigenous owned, 100%, not 100%, but mostly Indigenous led, there's so much to celebrate with this accomplishment. And I'll talk a little bit about what this means for us and what we're hoping to do. I will give you, okay. Ignore the typo. But so this was actually, we just finished testing a few weeks ago, back in September. So this is brand new info and excitement that has come from the project recently. Again, for those who really want to know some of the numbers, how much water and fluid was pumped, etc. It's here, you can read that. I will note that we saw 114 degrees Celsius temperature in the fluid, which is really great. And I can talk a little bit about what we can do with that fluid, because so again, like I mentioned, like in that video, when like other countries that are like drilling like deeper and are seeing higher numbers, they can maybe do a bit of like this stuff up here. But with what we saw, we're pretty happy and we can do a lot with that. So this line just shows like everything below that is what we're able to do with this resource. And so you can see there's food processing, fish farms, electricity. It is enough. You can see here that we meet the threshold to generate electricity. And Jamie actually kind of put together this little graph, which I really like, because my community is looking at a few of these added value opportunities, as they call it, beyond electricity. So you can see that, and Jamie always makes mention that, you know, none of this is linear. So you could be like crisscrossing and doing a bunch of these things at the same time, which is really exciting. So I know my tourism, because we're on the Alaska Highway, a lot of American tourists, Canadians as well, are driving to Alaska, looking at maybe building an onset spa. And it's a Japanese like bathhouse style spa, which uses like, it's like a really fancy like hot tub, I think, but it's really cool. We're also really close to the Liard River Hot Springs if you've ever been up north. And so maybe finding ways to, you know, maybe bring that a little bit closer for locals and or for people traveling, which could be a cool opportunity. Space heating for our homes is something that we could explore. But something that we are actively exploring and are really excited about is this like agriculture, food production scenario when it comes to these value added opportunities with geothermal. And I will touch on that a little bit going forward, but I just wanted to, really highlight the opportunities that exist, because it really is exciting for Fort Nelson First Nation, but also just the region and I think the province. So that's that. I did want to highlight, and again, this section of my presentation was like, why do we think we can do this? These are some geothermal facilities, electricity generating power facilities around the world. You can see, I guess the most like us is this Germany one. They got 120 degrees, we were at 114. So this, and also you can see like the trees kind of look similar, like the background is very similar to ours. But then places like New Zealand, even in the US, places in like Southeast Asia, geothermal is done pretty much all around the world except Canada at the moment, which is kind of exciting that Tu Deh-Kah is like leading the way. And I can't wait to hopefully one day see one of these facilities in my territory and producing a lot of great things for the people that live there. Alrighty, continuing on with this lovely story of Tu Deh-Kah, where we are now in the project. So we're currently in phase 4. You can see that round 2 testing was part of that. And so we're just continuing on with like, you know, securing financing. That's a big part of this. This is a major project, a lot of costs. So that's, now that we have the 30 days of pump testing, we're going to continue on with those conversations, securing whatever we need to do that. And then hopefully into next year, into 2024 is when we'll actually start like drilling more wells and, you know, maybe further exploring the reservoir downhole as well. And just figuring out maybe logistics of like, because I wish I had more time, because I talk about this all day. There's so many moving parts to this, and like deciding on like where the heat is going to be like transported to, how is it going to get to the market, etc., are all conversations that will be happening in these phases. And then I guess basically the big date we're trying to achieve is early 2026 is when we'll like, one of those facilities that you saw on the last slide will hopefully be built and running in Fort Nelson and in my territory. So yeah, really, we're still in early phases, and as you can see, the project is moving along nicely, which is exciting. This is just, I just wanted to show a picture of, you know, what the site looks like. you can see that there's a drilling rig on site. So a lot of this, I can tell you from a community liaison perspective, having conversations with like elders, with people in my own family who have been working in the oil and gas industry for decades. They're worried about, there's a lot of worry about like, are they going to be able to like work in this industry? What does that look like? And you can see this is like, if you've ever been on site, we use the same services and a lot of same like products to do geothermal that oil and gas does. There's a lot of crossover, which is fairly cool and might be useful for a lot of members of my nation that have that skill set. Again, just more pictures of operations. This was for our testing, and yeah. Alrighty, where are we going? So I kind of mentioned in that graph that big thermometer that was showing, that kind of showed what could come of this project. This is just kind of, a little bit of options, maybe simplifying it a bit. So you can, with geothermal, with the heat, the fluid, you can either produce electricity or heat. So with that heat, you can grow food, which is what we're hoping to do, and then other things such as like an onsen spa, direct, district heating, and then or we can use the heat for industrial purposes. I know if there's anyone on here from the north that talks about pellet plant, that heat could be used to dry some of that lumber, and which could just help a lot, I think, with costs and transportation, etc. And then thinking about the electricity, generating that and selling it to the grid, and then looking at like future possibilities is you could do crypto mining with that electricity. There's it's just really, possibilities are abundant, I would say, with this project, which is cool. And I talked a lot about agriculture, and is one component of many that I do want to highlight, because I think with this project, the community, like my community, has made it known that that they want this to be more than just energy. They want it to be more than just how can we generate electricity, but what does this mean for us right now, but also those yet to come. And I think with COVID, when all the shelves were empty, this summer we had a bridge, a tanker truck exploded on one of the only bridges on the highway, on the Alaska highway, which caused it was like COVID all over again. The shelves went empty. Food trucks had to travel, instead of 4 hours, they were traveling 20 plus hours, which then delayed food delivery by a week. So it was just and I think with climate change, we're going to keep seeing that, with the floods in southern BC last winter, with the wildfires, drought, these are things that unfortunately I think we're going to keep seeing. And so bringing food security to our nation was important to our members. And so we're looking at different opportunities, such as building a greenhouse. I mentioned that excess heat that will come from that facility. It's perfect environment for growing crops. And again, because that geothermal resource is 24/7, 365, we could be growing food all year round. And we are exploring fish farming, aquaculture, and doing that on land, because we have the heat and the water to do it. That's something that other regions across this country, across the world, might not be able to do because they don't have those resources, and we do. And then also just looking at farming in general, because then we can either grow the food for them, house them, etc., whatever we need to do. So yeah, this is kind of a big part of my job, is overseeing this part of it, and it's really fun. It's exciting. So yeah. And also a big priority for my nation was employment, of course. I think with the downturn in oil and gas and things like that, the Fort Nelson region has been struggling for many years. And so on top of food security, looking at employment for members is really important, employment and training. And so these are just some examples of the different types of expertise we're going to need throughout the project. And so you can see that, you know, we need a lot of like office-based people in like this fourth stage that we're currently in. And as, you know, as the facility gets built, again, we're going to need those oil and gas expertise workers, you know, to help us build this facility. So you'll see like a lot of rig work, heavy equipment. Environmental monitoring is also a big part of this. That's also a priority for my nation, is like making sure that this project aligns with like our overall, I think, values of as First Nations peoples, like protecting the land, preserving it for the next 7 generations. And then again, just like a lot of, you can see a lot of trade work in these. And then, but as we look at like these direct use or value added opportunities, like for agriculture, we're gonna need like a manager for whatever like opportunity we go after, laborers, farmhands, like onsen spa, we need estheticians, we need a receptionist, all these things. So I think this project just brings a diversity of opportunity to, I think, a very like mono or very less diverse environment that we currently have. Okay, this is my second last slide, and then we can go to questions. And so kind of thinking about like, how are we going to get here? I kind of brought you or tried to bring you through this really nice story of, you know, how this came to be, you know, what this means for my nation. And I think reflecting on like how we're going to get there is also a really big part of this whole story and discussion. So this is from last summer. We did a blessing ceremony where that injection and production well that I was talking about from that first Geothermal 101 slide, these are the 2 wellheads. There's a wellhead here, and then just off the side right here, those are the 2. We actually have those drilled. And actually the cool part about, I believe it was our injection well, we repurposed an old oil and gas well. And I don't know why I feel like I'm missing a slide, which is really unfortunate, because it shows kind of the layout of the site. And so we repurposed an oil and gas well, you know, trying to find ways to be low emitting of fossil fuels is really important to us. And just like, yeah, I think a theme of like not wanting to be left behind is real. And so, you know, how we're going to get there is like working with partners, is working with industry that have been here for a long time, and finding ways to work together is really important as well, because I think we can't do this alone, and we don't want to. You know, I think we should have learned from the past that doesn't really get anyone anywhere. And so, yeah, this was from last summer. The community came together and celebrated the big milestone of having these wells drilled. I will kind of bring it back to my own story when I shared that, you know, I didn't believe in this project, and I told my boss that. So I'm not in this picture. I attended this, but I refused to get into this picture. So I am like over here on the side, was like, do not leave evidence that I was here. Like, I do not want to be associated with this project. Like, it was like, I think back to a year ago, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, very grateful for this journey to sit here today to share about this project, and to tell you that I do believe in this project now, and I'm very proud of it, really excited. And I hope that, you know, by giving these kind of talks, by sharing knowledge, kind of, you know, just helping people understand like what geothermal energy is and why we think we can do it. I think because that's where a lot of that feeling was coming for me, because a year ago they didn't have a community liaison. The project was like 7 kilometers away, like I mentioned, and I didn't know anything about it. And so I think it's like providing people with information, from my perspective, has helped maybe calm or answer a lot of questions that people had. And so a big part of that is it going to show is just this, is sharing it, is sharing the successes, the milestones that we're hitting, our vision for the future, our goals for this project and for our community. And yeah, it's been really, really fun. And it's really all I have. Yeah, that's Masi Chow. Thank you for listening to me, and for whether it was an interest in geothermal or something else that I shared. I just thank you all for being here, because yeah, I'm really, this is an exciting project for sure.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Taylor. A round of applause for Taylor. I just appreciate and honor that you shared this journey. I'm going to say it again, Tu Deh-Kah.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, beautiful story. I really appreciate your courage, at the beginning, like a year ago, resisting and vocalizing and saying, I don't agree with this, but being willing to step into that place, be willing to bear witness of what this is all about, to learn about it. And so I admire that so much in you. I feel like when you said that at the beginning, I thought our future looks great. So thank you for being bold in your convictions and what you believe, and being on this journey. I am so appreciating that you took us, you use those layman terms, because this Esquoyo needed that. Otherwise you might have lost me at the beginning, but I understood the whole thing. So thank you. That speaks volumes when you can, have someone like me understand it all. I think in the chat box, I think she answered your question from Robert. Is it operational? And so I think that question was answered. So we're going to open it up. We have about 7 minutes for any questions or comments. Like, I loved when you shared you had it operational for like 30 days and it was good. I was like cheering you all on. I just thank you that you took us on this journey. So we're going to open up the floor for any questions, comments. No.
I know that was like a lot of info. Yeah, I feel like I should also share that Tu Deh-Kah is now on Facebook. We have a Facebook page. We're on LinkedIn. We have a website that we try to update when information like this pump test, which the pump test results will be shared probably by the end of the week. And so if at any time you have any questions, our contact info is on any of those platforms. And yeah, I'm here, my team is here to answer any questions. And yeah, I think Michelle, I do want to say that you were talking about, and acknowledge my journey of coming here. And I know I shared, Jamie and I were the first employees of Tu Deh-Kah, and we're also young people. And I think, young people really are leading this like climate action is mostly led by young people. And I think for this project specifically, it's helpful to have young people, because I think, we're a little bit more open-minded. And I think I shared that like my community, a lot of my community, my family even worked in oil and gas when it was like booming in the territory. And so some of them are very reluctant to, with this new technology, this different way of maybe doing things. And so I think having young people, we bring that, I think, this like enthusiasm and life to it, but we also are a little bit more open to, changing our way of thinking or viewing things. And so, and I think it has really helped this project, which, has been, really fun to be a part of. And I see like all these things, I'm like, thank you. Someone has a question about where did I get the gradient map? If you give me your email, I can send it to you. It was in a research paper. And sorry, I'm on an older Mac, so I couldn't bring up all my notes that I wanted to. And I think that's why that one slide didn't come in, which is unfortunate. But yeah, if you throw your email, I can send it to you. And I can tell you the paper that it's in. Yeah, I don't have it on these notes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, you threw out some good resources. We can follow you on Facebook and some other social media links. Yeah, would love to follow that journey and see where you land and see how it rolls out. So we're rooting for you. We're cheering you on in your community. Thank you so much. Again, in the chat box, there was just so much appreciation for you and your presentation and your story and your education to us. So thank you so much, Taylor. It doesn't seem that we have any more questions. Archie, make sure you drop your email for her so you can make that connection. But thank you so much. You did good. You did so good. I'm so proud of you. And keep going. Keep doing your thing, listening to, the call of your heart, for the sake of your community. I think that is what's important. We do these things because of the community, because of the 7 generations. So thank you so much. I honor you. And thank you all for joining us this fine Wednesday afternoon. We're glad you are here. We hope you have a good rest of the week, the rest of the day. And, always honor the call of your heart. Do what's good for you and your community and where your feet take you on your path. So be well, everyone, and we'll see you again soon. Peace.